So this is a virtual field trip. There's a live one in the spring, but I found this one that we can watch now since we're studying it right now. Oh, Burbo. There we go.
Welcome to all of you. I'm David Bolton, the Executive Director of the California Missions Foundation. I'm here today at Mission San Gabriel. This is a church that burnt over the summer, but so many people came together and they're rebuilding this mission. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to take you throughout the state, a virtual field trip for all of you as we visit several missions and hear the full story about California mission history. Mission San Diego, the very first of the California missions. It's our next stop on this virtual field trip.
For thousands of years, the American Indians lived in this area that we now know as the state of California.
You know, that 10,000 years is how long they have measured back that the Kumeyaay people have lived in this area.
All of the maps showed California being an island before the 1700s. So Spain, when they were exploring this part of the world, they saw no reason to make settlements here. Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo landed here in 1542. He named the area San Miguel after the saint whose feast day was closest to the landing because that was the Spanish tradition. Nothing happened to the area until around 1602. Vizcaino, again sailing to Spain, he landed here. He looked around at the area. He thought it was an island, but he renamed it San Diego after Saint Didacus of Alcalá, Spain. Finally, King Carlos III of Spain became concerned. Spain had what we call the Rite of Discovery because they had stopped here and named it. But unless they made settlements, it was going to be open to Russia, France, England, whoever wanted it. So King Carlos III of Spain sent word to New Spain, which is what we now refer to as Mexico, go claim Alta California for Spain. He wanted it to look religious. So he chose Father Unibro Serra, who was in charge of the Baja missions at that time, to lead the sacred expedition to establish what we now know as the state of California.
2 different ships and 2 different land parties came to California to establish the first mission and to establish the Spanish presence.
They all arrived here by the end of June 1769. The first mission, San Diego, was established on what we now know as the Presidio. Father Universera was born in Petra de Mallorca in 1713. He was born to a very poor farming family. His lifelong dream was to become a Franciscan, but he was very sickly as a child. He was small, he was wiry, and the Franciscans are mendicant orders. It's not easy being a Franciscan, but he was more determined and probably pesky to them than anything else, so they finally admitted him into the Franciscan order. He became very learned. He even had a doctorate in theology. He was extremely charismatic. People would come from miles around just to listen to him talk. His other lifelong dream was to bring Christianity to what they considered the New World. So when he was 36 years old in 1749, he sailed to the New World. He landed in New Spain, and then he was eventually assigned to the Baja mission. So when he was chosen to lead the expeditions up here, he was thrilled he could bring Christianity to a part of the world that was untouched by Christianity. When Father Serra arrived, I believe it was June 29, 1769, the men who had arrived first had sort of reconnoitered the area and chose the site for the first mission, which was what we now refer to as Presidio Hill.
For military reasons, you know, they placed the first Presidio, the fort, up on top of the hill, overlooking the village, overlooking the bay.
July 16th, 1769, he put a cross in the ground, hung a bell somehow, said mass, and declared the first mission of San Diego de Calicoa.
They had their buildings for the priests. They had a blacksmith here. They developed into the beginnings of a settlement. In that course of development, again, the priests were becoming. They were developing better relationships. They were learning their language. They were learning their ways. The natives were showing them, how to do the things that they would do to survive. Like acorns. Acorns, in their natural state are toxic. They're poisonous. The natives had a way on how to cure acorns so that they're edible. They were showing them how to survive in an area that they were not accustomed to. At the same time, the priests wanted, being industrious. They were from a part of Spain that was civilized, and they knew that the only way they could survive was if they started planting crops, managing crops. With just one priest and whoever else was there, they needed the help of the local natives, and that's what they started to do. They started to bring in the natives and teaching them how to first plow and do all those things so they could manage large plots of land to grow the necessary foods that they were accustomed to. The Spanish were accustomed to. San Diego at this time, it's a virtual paradise, and that is what Junipero Serra wrote about. He wrote about when he came north from Mexico that he found the natives to be very slothful. He found them to be a people that ran around with no clothes. They lived in a virtual paradise, which meant that they didn't have to forage for food. They foraged as far as for daily food, but to plan for winter, they didn't have to do that because all that was available even during the winter time. What they did is they recognized those areas that held the acorns, that held the berries, that held all those foods and substances. But as far as manage, no, they didn't manage other than to care for the areas of where they were harvesting them to. As they came to see the friars, the priests, and they saw that they were a peaceful people. There's always those few that trust before others, and I believe that's what they did. Those that trusted started to visit, and when they started to visit, they started to interact, and when they started to interact, they developed a relationship. Where finally they wanted what they had. They wanted to be a part of who they were.
From Mission San Diego, we now move to Mission San Juan Capistrano.
Yahweh that means beautiful day in the language of the Hashimin people, the builders of this mission. My name is Adalia Sandoval, and I'm the spiritual overseer, or Pula, of the people. I'm here today to share with you a little bit about who we are as the people and the builders of this mission, but also some of the songs that we sing. And I'm really happy to share this with you today. The Hashimin people, archaeologically, we say, have been here for over 16,000 years in this area of Orange County. We have a long history here on this land. Our ancestors were called different things like star people, ocean people, the people of the oak tree, or acorn people. And they had a strong idea of how life goes and how life flowed through all things. And so one of the things that I'm going to share with you today is also about the songs. because our ancestors love to sing, just like I'm sure you all love to sing. So I'm going to start out singing this song here because what it's telling us is that it's a song about how we are all one people. It's called a grandfather song, but it's also called a unity song. Ha, 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 hey, hey, hey. Sapulata to J-Y, Sapulata J-Y. Ha, 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 hey, hey, hey. Sapulata to J-Y, Sapulata J-Y. So that's just a little bit of the song. So I thank you very much for having this little bit of time with me today. And I hope that we can meet again someday in the future. The Franciscan priest's primary reason for coming to California was to share their Catholic faith. When someone joined the mission, they were first baptized and then instructed in their new religion. For the Ahashiman joining Mission San Juan Capistrano, it was a lot of change. They would have received daily religious instruction as well as attended Mass twice a day. Sarah Chapel was built in 1782 and is the only remaining mission church where Father Sarah said Mass. As you can see, the building is highly decorated, and there are many paintings as well as statues that the priests would have used to teach about the Catholic faith. Originally, Sarah Chapel looked much different than what you see here today. There were no pews or benches, and the floor would have been made out of dirt rather than tile. Mass is still celebrated regularly here in Sarah Chapel, with the exception of when the mission has been closed.
From Mission San Juan Capistrano, we go back to Mission San Gabriel, where the Tongva have lived for thousands of years.
Hello, I'm Julia Balgody. I'm the culture officer for the Gabrielino Tongva of San Gabriel. Today I'm going to share the way I'd like our curriculum. As we talk about telling the true story, I'd like to start with the environment at the mission San Gabriel. When people came to the mission, there were no signs out there saying, help wanted, now hiring, apply today. And then I have a picture of a Tongva girl that is so happy. She's building her home, her key for the Tongva. It's called a key, K-I-I-Y. And then she's handing an apple to the priest. And I want you to look at it and tell me what kind of posture is she having. And that's where we open the door. Mission St. Gabriel was a working mission, so they brought olive trees in order to make the olive oil. And then Spanish brought lemons for lemon trees, but we had lemon grass for lemonade. So in the project when I'm teaching, I'm going to have a glass of lemonade for the children and a glass of lemon grass. And then there was grapevines. San Gabriel Mission provided wine for the entire California. We had good land, and it was very rich, so it supplies all the California. So we have the picture of a bottle of wine to show that. When the missionaries came, they helped make soap. It was called lava soap. It bothered the people because it was too strong. But we made soap out of the yucca plant. So those are things that kind of hurt the environment. And I think when we're telling the truth about the mission, we should understand how contact hurts. If it takes 13 years to build a mission, we weren't sitting around for 13 years. We were learning things, and we were providing workforce for the mission in order to make these things that we had never, it's not like we didn't have them, we had just not seen them in the same way that people had seen them before.
From Mission San Gabriel, we now continue north to Mission San Luis Obispo.
Hello, welcome to Mission San Luis Obispo. I'm Angela Bertrand, one of the senior docents here, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to our mission. Our very special and different feature is our bells, and we want to show you the bells, the bell tower, and some of our bell ringers. So please come along.
Today we have cell phones and we have watches and we have clocks, and those all tell us what time of the day it is. During the mission period, they had two things. They had a sundial, which they could look at the sundial and figure out what time it was, and then they would be able to ring the bells so that people could come to church. They would know if there was a fire or if there was a visitor coming to the church. All of those things would have been signs for anyone in the community to know that something was going on. So they used those bells to tell time, to talk about, or to invite people to mass, for a funeral, for a wedding. All the important events that went on in people's lives were regulated by those bells.
It's kind of like our world at school, right? Everything is by the bell, when you start, when you end. That's how their whole life was.
Somebody rings a bell to like what's your day?
Yeah.
How does a bell ring for somebody?
You're watching it right now.
Somebody does that ring?
You're watching it right now.
This is what we do to get people's attention. Because when you come to church, we don't have clocks.
The bells that we use
I
today
know that.
were made in Holland and installed in the mission about 15 years ago. They're very similar in size and in shape to our original bells. They have a wonderful sound to them. And today, instead of having 3 bells in our mission, bell tower, we
Put a
have 5
Band-Aid on if you
bells.
want.
And so they are tuned so that you can actually play a simple tune on the bell.
So cool.
We thank you so much for joining us at Mission San Luis Obispo. We feel we have a really unique mission here in its originality,
Yusuf,
and its
stop.
original structure, and in the fact that it's an active parish used by the public, used by the universities for choir, concerts, orchestras. It's sort of a hub of the city here in San Luis. We really hope that you will be able to come visit us and hear our mission bells ring as you stroll through our gardens and get a flavor of the early mission days here in San Luis Obispo.
"30 minutes north of Mission San Luis Obispo is Mission San Miguel. Using 3D technology, the California Missions Foundation was able to digitally recreate the native living quarters at this mission. This animation gives you a sense of where the Indians lived, how close their quarters were to the church. And speaking of the church, we now take you inside for a virtual look at Mission San Miguel.
Oh my gosh, that's a big church. Look at a nice long 20 minutes.
That's beautiful.
No, it's 200.
From Mission San Miguel, we now travel north to the Carmel Mission Basilica. Carmel was the longtime headquarters of the missions during the time of Saint Junipero Serra. Carmel is now celebrating its 250th anniversary this year, and the mission looks forward to inviting everyone back to the mission when restrictions allow. Statues were important in the California missions, and the Mission Carmel community has worked for many generations to preserve all of the historic artifacts and priceless works of art that date to the founding of the California missions and long before even 1769. Many of these items were there at important moments in California history. Within the Carmel Mission Basilica, there can be found one of those very special items, Our Lady of Bethlehem. This statue was one of the first European-styled statues to travel to California, and it's the oldest image of Mary in California. Our Lady of Bethlehem with the child Jesus was a gift of the Cardinal of Mexico City to José de Galvez, Viceroy of Mexico. In 1769, Galvez ordered that the statue travel with the land and sea expedition Portola and Serra to Alta California aboard the ship the San Antonio. The statue was so important to Saint Junipero Serra that he thought the statue must have been a loan to the expedition, and so he returned it to Mexico City. The Viceroy then sent it back, directing that it should remain with the mission and Father Serra, and it's still there today. Just this last year, the Carmel Mission Basilica Museum recently finished a major step in preserving Our Lady of Bethlehem for future generations to enjoy. From Mission Carmel, we now move east to Mission San Juan Bautista, the 15th California mission. Music,
And my shirt. San Juan
dancing,
Bautista.
and the California mission. During the mission era, the Native American musicos were well renowned and known throughout California, and they were said to be equal to the
Arabella.
players in New Spain
Arabella.
and even Europe. Every mission had many different types of music that was played, including popular dance music. People would gather at fandangos. These were multi-day get-togethers and dance parties. Even before the pandemic, many people who appreciate the music and the dancing throughout California would get together for present-day fandangos. There are still music bands today that carry on the tradition of that mission era. Some of the members of these bands are descendants of California's first families. Bands like Heartstrings from Monterrey, Los Alibeños from San Francisco, Los Californios out of San Diego. For church music, folks like John Ward and the New World Baroque Orchestra at San Luis Obispo have recorded music from that period for many years. The dance steps for the fandango dances can be learned, and here we see a few of our mission docents practicing for a fandango at the mission and also at the old Crane House from 1834, which was a popular gathering place. That house is just across the street from the historic mission. As you can see, these dance steps are a lot of fun. During the mission period, everyone was invited to these dances. We now go to
Okay.
Mission San Francisco, often called Mission Dolores.
Oh, that's the one I showed you
We're
pictures.
joined by Andrew Galvin, a local Alone. He also works at the mission, and he answers the question, is Saint Junipero Serra misunderstood?
Padre Junipero Serra has almost always been misunderstood because it depends on which lens you look at him. Many promote him as a historical figure, which he is. Many promote him as a spiritual
You cannot sit there
person,
if you
which he
continue
is.
to talk.
That's why he was declared a saint. He did not become a saint because he found missions in California. He was named a saint because he lived the life of a saint in Spain, in Mexico, and then finally here in the United States. And it was based on that review of his life that the church declared him a saint. You have to know Junipero Serra's spirituality to understand how he saw his own personal entrance into California. For this has been his lifelong dream, to go to a place where the gospel had never been brought. He was carrying the message of Jesus Christ into Upper California.
How did Father Serra advocate for Native populations?
If you look at the map of California, and you look to those 4 presidios that have missions attached to them, Santa Barbara, San Diego, Monterey, San Francisco. The military presidios are 4 or 5 miles away from the mission. That was by design of Junipero Serra to protect the Indians. To protect the Indians from who? To protect the Indians from the military, because the military men were violating the Indian women. But many people miss that. But that's one of the wonderful things he did to protect the Native peoples. He was also advocating for their own self-rule. At the missions, he established what was known as the alcalde role, the mayor. So he would have the Native peoples select their own mayor from among their population to be their mayor, to negotiate with the religious leaders, the padres, and with the military leaders, what would happen to the Native peoples as a community. That was unheard of in other parts of the country at that time, as far as Native peoples in our modern United States of America, or even Native peoples in other mission territories.
As we wrap up our virtual field trip for today, we now show you images from all of the 21 California missions. We will join you after this tour to answer questions that your fellow students submitted prior to today's session. Enjoy this virtual journey.
There's the bell I was telling you about. That's the El Camino Real bell. It looks blue because it's made of copper. See, there's one right there in front of the mission. So you know what I should do? Why don't I'm going to pause it, and I'm going to tell you your mission so that it'll mean a little bit more. So, Arabella, would you pass this out to everyone? Then we'll watch this a little bit more. So, if you can hear me, raise your hand. Okay. You're going to need a pen or pencil. I want you to write your name on the front and then flip your paper over. Yep, just wait patiently. I know you can do it. Name on the front, then flip it to the back.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for being a part of this very exciting
Harper.
virtual field trip. We hope you enjoyed it as we showed you not only several of the California missions, but also learned more about the native stories, so important to the history here in California. On behalf of the California Missions Foundation, I'd like to thank the William Kennett Foundation, as well as the Pebble Beach Company Foundation, for making this virtual field trip possible. Now it's a chance for us to hear your questions, and several schools submitted those questions, and we're going to be presenting those as we now present to you two experts. We have joining us for this virtual field trip the chairman of the California Missions Foundation, Michael Imwalt. We also have joining us now Andrew Galvin. And Andrew Galvin, he is an Ohlone from the northern section of California, and he also spent a lot of time working at Mission Dolores in San Francisco.
Mission Dolores,
So we
anyone?
have a couple questions that we would like to pose to each of those individuals, and we're going to start with the chairman of the California Missions Foundation, Michael Imwalt. Michael, this first question is for you, and it comes from Olivet Charter Elementary, Santa Rosa, California, and it's Greg Bickle's class. And the first question, Mike, as we get ready to go to you, who founded the California missions besides Junipero Serra?
Good question. Father Serra founded the first 9 missions beginning with San Diego in 1769. The last mission he founded was San Buenaventura in 1782. It was not, however, the last site that he founded. He also established the site of the Santa Barbara Presidio in April of 1782 before returning to Monterey, where he passed away. The next 9 sites were founded by Father Fermin Lasuen, beginning in 1786 with the establishment of Santa Barbara Mission. His last mission was Mission San Luis Rey de Francia in 1798. Father Pedro Esteban Tapis founded Santa Ynez Mission in 1804. Father Vincent Francisco Sarria founded San Rafael in 1817. And Father Jose Altamira founded San Francisco de Solano, the last mission, in 1823.
Wow, a lot of Franciscans, a lot of fathers helped to found all of these missions. And in addition to the Franciscans that founded the missions, the natives here in California did so much to build these missions. We're now going to introduce you to Andrew Galvin. He's a member of the Ohlone tribe. That area of Northern California around the Bay Area and into Monterey is where the Ohlone lived for thousands of years before several missions were set up there. And Andrew Galvin, we welcome you, and also want to say thank you for all you do, Andy Galvin, there at Mission Dolores in San Francisco. This next question is for you, and it comes from Mrs. Neely's classroom in Pomona, California. The question: what was the main purpose of the California missions?
Any ideas?
The main purpose of the California
You think you know the answer?
was many goals. One was to push Spain's borders north, but in particular with the native peoples,
Expand Spain.
the role of the missionaries, the padres, was to change the Indians from their native condition into Spaniards. And that meant that you changed the religion, you changed the lifestyle, you changed where the Indians lived, you changed the languages. Everything was to be changed to meet the European mold. And it was very difficult for the Indians, because how do you like outsiders coming into your homeland and demanding you change to their ways? You know, a foreign government invading is basically what it was.
Andy, thank you. We're now going to go back to Mike Imwally, the chair of the California Missions Foundation, for this next question from Samara Stevens, fourth grade class, Colony Oak Elementary. Mike, when was the first California mission built, and when was the last California mission?
You can write those down, those
It
dates.
says it on the front. This is mine.
Mike Imwally, are you there? Andy, you're with us. Let's go to Andy
Okay.
Galvin to answer.
Sorry, guys.
I think we need to recall that the first California mission is in Baja California. There
Which is
are
now
32
Mexico.
missions south of San Diego. And then there are
32.
21, including San Diego and north. The first mission in Baja is in the year 1697. So the missions are almost 100 years old when San Diego mission was established in 1769. And the last
1769,
Mike
San
said
Diego.
to us earlier, Sonoma mission, 1823. Got that year right? So it's a good 150 years almost was the mission period from Baja in the south all the way to Sonoma in the north.
Thank you, Andy. Mike Imwally, the chairman of CMF, we're now going to go to you for another question. And this question comes from Mr. Alec Owen's classroom, the fourth grade classroom, and the teachers wanted to ask from their students this question. How did they plan to build the missions? And what math was used? Mike?
Ooh, math.
This is my favorite question.
Because grown-ups love
The
math.
missions, part of the plan for the missions was to find sites where there was already a large Indian population that they could indoctrinate into the Catholic Church. So typically sites were planned after surveying areas and finding sites that had a large Indian population, and then had to have all the natural resources and raw materials to build the mission and grow the food and support the animals to support the community over time. So how was math involved? Math was involved in a lot of ways. First of all, the Indians had math before the missions came. They knew how to track the stars. They knew geometry. They knew the seasons. But they learned new math from the Spanish when they got here. They were able to make recipes. They were able to add and subtract and divide and multiply to make adobe, to make clay, to make tile. They built water systems with clay tile and lime in Santa Barbara, for example, that required so much skill and detail that the American Society of Civil Engineers declared it a National Historic Engineering Landmark. And they know something about math.
That's great, Mike. Thank you so much. And Mike, we have another question for you. This one comes from Megan Edwards, fourth grade class, Plum Canyon Elementary in Saugus, California. And the question is, how were the missions built? Who built them? And where did the materials come from to build the California missions?
That's a really good question, too. How they were built varies from mission to mission, and that varies from mission to mission depending on what materials were available. Who built them were the California Indians, and they were all built by the California Indians from San Diego to Sonoma. What materials were they built from? The materials right underneath the missions themselves. If they're built from stone, the stone comes from very nearby. If they're built from adobe, the adobe comes from the site that you're standing on when you're in front of the mission. The other materials, like I mentioned before, the sites were chosen carefully so that all those materials were as close as possible to the planned mission. And one of the most important of those materials, obviously, was water. Not only did you need it to drink and bathe and prepare food, but you needed it to water crops and water animals as well.
Mike, thank you so much. And now let's go to Andy Galvin for a few additional questions. Andy Galvin, this question comes from Samara Stevens' fourth grade class, Colony Oak Elementary. How many total missions are there, in Alta California?
In Alta California, that's Upper California from San Diego to Sonoma, we count 21 missions.
And how many total in all of California, including Baja California?
Baja has 32. So going back to Mike's favorite math equation, 32 and 21 equals 53 California missions total.
Wow, a lot of missions. Andy, we're going to stay with you for a couple additional questions on the native Californians.
Okay.
Before that, though, I have a question from Angela LaCorte's class, Lemon Avenue Elementary in La Mesa, California. The question, why were the missions built by the Spanish?
The Spanish didn't build the missions. As you heard Mike say, the labor was provided by the Indians. I like to say they're not Spanish missions, they're not Mexican missions, they are Indian missions built by and used by Indians. The first people who lived at the missions, who worked at the missions, and with the purpose of the missions, who prayed at the missions for the first 65 years in most cases, were all the Indians who lived there. We had 2 padres, maybe 4 or 5 military folks, but the population that we say at most missions reached over 1,000 people, but those were all Indians. So the first baptism, the first marriages, the first funerals, all those events were with Indian folk who lived there and built those missions.
So interesting perspective.
Andy, another question for you. This is from Nicole McKilligan's 4th grade class, Live Oak in Lodi, California. Could people leave the missions?
That's a good question, and there's a yes and no answer to it. Every year, the Padres would grant vacation time, as it were, home visits, where the Indians could leave the mission and go back to their native villages. Basically, that was because there was a shortage of food at the mission, and the Indians could go back to their home villages, eat their traditional foods, and that way the mission wasn't overtaxed when it didn't have enough food to feed the Indians. However, some Indians would leave without permission. Either they didn't like what they saw, what was going on at the missions, the way the military and the Padres were treating the Indians, or they saw the massive disease, the contagious disease that happened at the missions, and so who would want to stay there where everybody's dying? So they left. But there was the understanding on the Padres' part that once an Indian was baptized, he or she belonged to the mission. They needed to live at the mission so they could fulfill their religious obligations by going to Sunday Mass every Sunday. And if they had returned to their villages and did not come back to the mission, then they weren't fulfilling their promises made at baptism. And that created much difficulty. And therefore the Padres would ask or send the soldiers to bring back the Indians to the missions. It was a difficult time because today in our world, if we don't like what's going on at our church, we leave. And the priest and the church council figures out, what can we do to make people like us? Back then, there was no discussions. It was simply, you need to be here, go get our Indians and bring them back. And they were also the workforce. So the soldiers wanted the Indians because the Indians were the free labor.
And
Right.
we have a couple related questions.
Okay, guys, we are going to stop there. We run out of time. Did anyone learn anything new?
I learned that in my mission as well.